All right, let's try this again. So I wanted to put this up just briefly to make sure that folks have the background in their mind about the true need and importance of the SNAP program, just by looking at the numbers here in Tennessee. I'm gonna well just really briefly touch on this. SNAP is the most effective anti-hunger program that we have in the country. It feeds in Tennessee over 700,000 families. At the height of the Great Recession, we were almost at 1 million families in Tennessee that participated in the SNAP program. And it's been around since the Depression. It was a pilot program that came out of the Depression, and then by the 60s, it was permanent and working across the country. Over 40 million people across the country rely on SNAP to help feed their families. So it's really important that SNAP remains strong and supported. And so we're going to dive into talking about the shutdown, and let's go to the map to start. I just wanted to share this message, this image to begin with. Currently, we have just over 700,000 Tennesseans that rely on SNAP. And we broke down the numbers by district because I think it's helpful to look at where people are across the state. And so this is a helpful tool, and I'll bring this back up in a second. Just a real brief overview of beyond SNAP, there are a couple other programs that are impacted by the shutdown. So I wanted to touch, already we've talked a little bit about SNAP, but WIC is another one of those programs that has been impacted by the shutdown. Luckily, there's been a lot of effort on the part of the Let's continue with this. There has been a lot of effort on the part of WIC to make sure that it continues to get to families during the shutdown. The Trump administration said it has guaranteed tariff money to pay for the WIC program. Trump and the USDA allocated funds for WIC. And so WIC for the time being remains in effect and running and operating as normal. And so far into November, that remains true. The longer the shutdown goes, the more difficult it is to continue to fund it. But for now, WIC is in place and being supported. School meals as well. School meals is a reimbursement program, and so schools get reimbursed for the meals that they spend. And folks at DOE here in Tennessee have said they're able to continue to do this. And so kids can show up to school and receive breakfast and lunch. So I wanted to just put that out there too. And SNAP too, it has remained in place all of October. And it's now days before November that we're really concerned about SNAP in particular being impacted by the shutdown. Just to give some background on the shutdown and why we are where we are, Congress failed to pass a 2026 funding bill by September 30th. This happens every year. Congress decides on a funding budget. And in recent years, it's become more challenging and tenuous. Usually they are able to do a continuing resolution. A continuing resolution helps to patch and provide money until they fully decide on the full year's budget, but that didn't even happen. And so one of the major points of contention were the demands to permanently extend ACA and the premium tax credit. So the healthcare has been a big part of this of the budget of the shutdown in the budget conversations. If premiums rise, it'll affect, it could potentially affect midterms. And there's a lot of pressure building on Congress right now, not just because of the health care piece of it, but because of SNAP. And so we'll go a little bit more into that in upcoming slides. We can go to the next slide. Oh, there, that's exactly where we need to be. Oh, I already touched on the healthcare side of it. Again, I mentioned that TJC does a ton of work on healthcare. We have resources. There's a link there that dives into more of the healthcare issue inside of this. We're going to focus on SNAP. SNAP is now a pawn in the negotiations over the budget. Benefits are being illegally withheld from families. Because we saw it with WIC. They found a way to put WIC funding through. Social Security is getting through. There is a way to get SNAP benefits through, and that's not being done. There's contingency funding, and USDA has the power to release this, but they're not releasing it. So I'll give you a few more details on that. We can go to the next slide just to give you the picture of where we are right now. I mentioned I was at the Capitol and I was with other advocates in other states. Some states have said, as long as USDA gets the green light, we could turn this on tomorrow. Tennessee says they need at least 10 days to, once the switch is flipped, once USDA gives states the green lights, Tennessee has said that they need up to 10 days to get benefits out. So already we're looking at delays, unfortunately, in Tennessee. I'm hoping, given the urgency, that there's a way to figure this out. With the technology that exists today, I hope Tennessee does everything they can to get benefits out early if we're able to get USDA to switch to flip that switch. So we are looking at delays come November 1st. And there are contingency funds available that can be used. So back to the USDA piece, there's money in the emergency budget of USDA. It's not quite enough to get through the end of November, but it's enough to see families through the first couple weeks. And so hopefully enough to make sure that the total funding is there. Because on the first, that's 700,000, over 700,000 Tennesseans who will be without money for groceries. It also affects us economically. I think most of us in the room are very focused on the individual and the impact to the people, because that's who we see and that's who we serve. But this has an impact to our economy. And in September of this year, it was over 145 million that came into the state for through SNAP benefits. And SNAP benefits, they're not something that sits in somebody's pocket or sits in the bank. People spend that money immediately. And so that's going to be a hit to the economy too, which ultimately comes back to the people that we serve, and will hurt Tennessee, hurt the state much wider than just people not having food. And that should be enough. There is some legislation being floated around by Republicans. One in particular that I wanted to lift up was the supporting legislation to get, well, let's see, I think I might have the name of it later on. I think it's the Get SNAP Act, and I met with Blackburn's staff, and I am happy that the Republicans are supportive of SNAP, and that's important, and it needs to be supported, but legislation is going to take days. USDA getting the green light from Secretary Rollins and from the administration, pressure from Congress, that's the most immediate way to get SNAP to families. And I want to make sure that that message is clear for everybody in the room, that the most immediate way, most immediate fix to getting benefits to families is for USDA to allow states to draw down their funds. Earlier this month, USDA gave direction to all states saying, do not draw down funds, where do not send your data, because every month states send data to the government, to USDA, so that the federal government can send those funds to states. They were told to hold on that. And we want to make sure that pressure is put on USDA, the administration, and Congress to flip that switch, tell USDA to get funds to families. And I'll give a little more background, I think, on the next slide. Well, before I get into the background, this is the information that's posted right now on the Tennessee DHS website talking about the shutdown. It's pretty brief, and so I'm hoping today we can provide a little more context. In the one thing that that I believe um, they say the federal government shutdown continues. Federally funded SNAP benefits for November will be unavailable. The one thing that I do want to push back on this message is the government being shut down. Whether the government is shut down or not, SNAP can get to families. It is possible, and so that's another takeaway that I hope you all leave here with is even if the shutdown remains in place, and I hope it ends soon, um, regardless, SNAP can get to families today if USDA acts. And I'll go into that on the next slide. So just a little more background. SNAP is an entitlement program, which means that by law, if someone is eligible for SNAP, the US government must be funding to provide SNAP benefits. And so it's always been the case that we have found a way, even during the shutdown, found a way to get benefits to families. This isn't the longest shutdown yet. The longest shutdown was in 2018 under the previous Trump administration, and the Trump administration, along with Congress, along with US, did work to get benefits out to families. They even got it out. I'm trying to. Okay. All right. The longest shutdown in 2018, they got benefits out a few days before we went into the second month of the shutdown. So this can be avoided. We could have avoided it already. And right now, the goal is to minimize the damage that's already being created. Again, I mentioned the bills that are out there. Senator Hawley has the bill that is called the Keep SNAP Funded Act. Blackburn is sponsoring it. And as of today, I think there are a total of about 29 Republican senators that have also signed on to it, which is great. The support for SNAP is important because it needs to be supported, but the direction and the focus is not where it needs to be. So I hope folks leave today and call their congressman and say, you know, we really need Congress to press on USDA, press on the administration to get the benefits out to families. You give USDA the green light to get benefits to families. We can go to the next slide. All right. On the response side, I think a lot of you have seen our emails and some of the stuff that we're pushing out there right now. After coming back from DC, I'm furious. I am really, really outraged, and I think everybody should be too. We shouldn't let this go by and throw up your hands. We should be really, really motivated to act, to call folks, write letters, whatever it is you need to do. If you have a social media presence, do that. Focus energy on getting USDA to get benefits out to families and let Congress allocate funding for SNAP. We've been lifting up a lot of stories. There are families in every single one of our counties that have important stories to tell. SNAP is sometimes the only thing families have to put food on the table. It helps to make sure they're able to pay rent. It helps to make sure that they have money to afford medicine, healthcare. Without SNAP, it's a snowball effect that affects so many other things. SNAP alone, SNAP is not a standby alone. It's connected to so many things. If somebody is getting SNAP, they're likely struggling to make their rent, struggling to pay bills, Yeah, there are all these things, putting gas in their car. And if you lose the SNAP benefit, sometimes it's a matter of just $20, $30. If they don't have that, they don't have the gas to put in their car to get to work or to get their kids to school. So there is a very thin margin for people who participate in the SNAP program to be able to keep up and going. And the fact that Congress and USDA and the administration is letting this slip is beyond outrageous. So please, 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 please email, write, put as much pressure as you can on Congress. I know some folks in the room, under the work that you do are limited about lobbying and whatnot. This is worth clocking out. This is worth clocking out for and doing it on your personal time. So if you're restricted in the work that you do it under your personal time. It's so important. This is I can't even imagine what it's going to be like in this first week, because even during the pandemic, we saw long lines at the food banks. Our food bank partners do an amazing job to bolster the hunger that exists, but they can't do it alone. And during the pandemic, the safety net program was at its strongest. The Trump administration put a ton of effort into boosting SNAP and all the other programs, WIC. All of those programs were in full force during the pandemic. So next week will be devastating for families. And Congress should hear from every single one of us. We'll go to the next slide. And I've already covered a lot of this. All SNAP recipients are going to be impacted. And the impact is not just current SNAP recipients. The government's been shut down for 30 days now. And we have TSA workers who aren't getting paid, military families who aren't getting paid, government workers that are furloughed across our state. And already they're showing up at food banks and trying to find ways to make ends meet. And a lot of those folks aren't even eligible for SNAP, but maybe applying now because now they are eligible. So in addition to addressing all the hardship that has been caused by the shutdown, we're going to see that magnified with all SNAP recipients in the state and across the country who are impacted in the first week. Children, veterans, elderly are some of the most vulnerable people that participate in the SNAP program. Over 40% of people in Tennessee who participate in SNAP are children. 37% are seniors, people with disabilities. And so when those folks don't have benefits, children can't get in their car and drive to a food bank. People who are disabled, it's really challenging to drive to a food bank. Everybody goes to the grocery store, and SNAP is the best way to help address hunger. Even nonprofits are scraping together. We're scraping together at TJC to put together boxes because we already work with clients who come in, and SNAP always takes a little bit of time to get to people. So we have food boxes, but we're anticipating that even more people will be coming to our doors and will have need. So we're doing that. Schools are also going to be impacted by this. If families show up after a weekend of not eating, I know we have school folks in the room, that affects how they show up at school. And sometimes it affects whether or not they show up at school. And so schools will be impacted, and hunger and poverty will rise. We've been trying to be really measured about not creating panic, but we're getting really close with just 2 days away to not being able to avoid that. I think a couple of things that I do want to keep in mind, and I don't know if that's on the next slide. As we look at the slide, because I think this slide is important to look at and to share, but a couple of things to keep in mind. There've been rumors about cards and being able to spend SNAP benefits after November 1st. I want to make sure that everybody knows that families can continue to spend their benefits. For the few families that might have money left over on their cards, they can continue to spend their benefits into November. Most families are trying to make ends meet until the next. So it's slim, slim the number of people who actually have money left over on their cards. But for those who do, they can continue to use those into November. People should continue to apply. Even on November 1st, they should continue to apply to the SNAP program because it's still within their right. The DHS is still working, and so people should continue to apply if they think they're eligible. People should continue to submit appeals, and if they think they're wrongfully, not getting their benefits, people should continue to submit appeals. And I think this is a perfect time to take a question.
I don't know if you guys would have an answer to this, but it would so far be you guys are DHS. No. Um, based on just the volume of applications I've submitted in the past and delays that have happened in the past, my educated guess is that when things start back up, they're going to back pay people for November. Is that a good educated guess?
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. Yes, that's the other thing that I wanted to stress, that the law is if somebody's eligible for SNAP, they're eligible for those benefits. So if somebody doesn't get their benefits on November 1st, once USDA has the green light or the government shutdown stops, whichever happens first, they are eligible for those benefits. November benefits are not going to disappear. I think a previous slides, I didn't focus on this, but there are lawsuits already. There are, I think, about 12 states now that are signed on to a lawsuit stating that with November benefits not going out, with USDA not green lighting SNAP benefits for the 1st of November, that's against the law. And so there's a lawsuit out there already. And so yes, November benefits will come back to families. Any other questions in the room? Or things that folks are seeing? Yes.
So SNAP benefits are not appropriations. So this government shutdown are not part of that argument. The appropriations for WIC or some other programs are part of that. And so this money is and should be allotted. And that's why it hasn't happened. I just wanted to clarify.
Yes. Thank you. I appreciate that, Lauren. Yeah, and that's kind of the point I was making in the very beginning. WIC is an appropriated program, and we found a way, the administration found a way to make sure that there was funding available for WIC. So if they can do it for WIC, they can do it for SNAP. And by law, that funding, they have to, it should be available. So yes, November benefits will come back to families. One more question in the front.
Thank you. I just wanted to highlight that even though November benefits will come out to families eventually, if you have been in that position or you serve people in that position, the payday loans that they have taken out, the charges on their credit card, the interest that happens, when those benefits hit, it is going to take some of the stress away, but they are going to have dug a hole that is going to be difficult to overcome. So it's not like, just hold on till they come through. We need them to come through now.
Not to minimize that, I just have people asking me.
Yeah, no, and that I'm glad you brought that up, because that is a question that has been floated out there. Are November benefits going to disappear? And they're not. They will come back, but they will be late, and even a day or two late is too late for a lot of families. The other thing that I wanted to back to the response and back to urging people to reach out. I met with some of the representatives yesterday and the day before One of the, the representatives, I won't name which one, but his staff said, yeah, most of my calls are about SNAP, which made me feel good. I'm like, great, working. I think it needs to work even more. So call. But they said, can we be candid? Can we ask you a question about messaging? Um, I tried to explain that if the Democrats did this and whoever was on the phone cut that staffer off and said, listen, I don't care whose fault it is. You need to get us benefits. So if folks if folks have a phone call with anybody, like the blame game that's going on that we all hear in the press is not helpful. Like who cares whose fault it is? The only issue that should be addressed right now is getting SNAP to families. The blaming thing doesn't help anybody. So I think that's another thing that was revealing to me yesterday. Another staffer, I had a meeting with another staffer whose SNAP person wasn't there. That was another thing that I found kind of shocking as we're leading up to a shutdown and the SNAP person wasn't there. Granted, the staffers are not getting paid either. I mean, they're also not getting paid. So, but still. Um, any questions? I don't know if there are any questions over Zoom. I know folks are on the Zoom, and I want to say to folks on Zoom, we are taking down all the questions. So if there's anything that we can't answer in the chat, we'll come back to it and answer it there. Do folks have any other questions or anything to share about what they're seeing or what they're hearing? Any messaging that needs clarification?
I heard you say that the Health and Human Services workers are still present. Okay, so with SNAP, once families are enrolled, is there not, it's like a federal thing where benefits are put on? You don't need a local program to do it. It's done. So like working wise, there's not an impact. It's just really literally getting those. I'm just curious.
That's a good point. That's another really good point because with WIC, one of the great things about WIC, and we'll talk about this later, is that the federal government assured WIC that if the states need to front funds for the program, they would reimburse states. It's up to the states to decide if they can do that or in the position. But the federal government, the administration said, we will reimburse states. With SNAP, it's different. SNAP, the funds come directly from the feds onto the cards. And so there has been some advocacy around asking states to front SNAP benefits, but the federal government won't reimburse states that do that. So it will come out of state funding that won't be reimbursed. But they don't have to do that. USDA can draw down the funds. It's right there. It's right there. This is a man-made disaster in the making. So yeah, that's I think important clarification and difference between WIC and SNAP. I think there's one more slide. Yeah, here's for folks who may not have seen some of the things that we have out there. We have the numbers. So if you need numbers and if you need any help, either calling or emailing, let any of us know at TJC. We're happy to help. There is a link and also a scan code there that leads to the email. But it's really important. And I think the other thing that I would say, I would also call, I would call constituent services at the local level, because we have people in power here at the state that can take it up the chain to their legislators, because this is something that's going to impact every single community. So I wouldn't stop at our U.S. Congress people. I would let our local officials know too, and send people to them as well, because I think it's important that they hear this too. And then I think there's one more slide. No? All right. Any questions? Well, we'll have time to talk more and we can talk during lunch about this. I think we will probably weaving the shutdown into everything we talk about today. We have more to say about WIC later and some of the news that we have there. And there's a little bit with school meals, but for the most part, school meals are protected. They are impacted though, in that the harder it is for families to sign up for the SNAP program, that affects direct certification for school meals. So when SNAP is hurt, participation in school meals is hurt. And so that's something to keep in the back of your mind, not too far back. That is also to SNAP being impacted. All right, I think we are going right into the next session, aren't we? All right. And bye to the folks on Zoom. Thank you for joining us. We'll be doing these debriefs. We're back to every week. For folks that were joining us during the SNAP cut conversation, we're gonna now switch gears and go back to weekly, talking about the shutdown until